It's the I Can't Mom Today podcast with Heather, the new mom, and Vera, the seasoned mom. I Can't Mom Today.
Hey, this is Vera and Heather back again with another episode of I Can't Mom Today podcast. Hi, Vera.
Hello, Heather. How's it going?
Well, you know, COVID times.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
What
Baker
happened?
woke up with a sore throat and a nasty cough. So we're going to go try to get him tested today. And, you know, because daycare won't take him back until with a cough until he has a negative test. So.
Oh, okay. Has he had a COVID test before?
Yes, and it's not fun.
I would imagine with a 4-year-old trying to stick something up their nose, it's not, unless they want it there like a marble or something. But
or his finger constantly. And I told him, I'm like, hey, dude, it's the same thing as your finger. You're fine. Like, look, it's even smaller than your finger. And he just no, that doesn't work.
Not having it. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that. I hope that his test comes out well. I hope that the test itself goes by swimmingly and that it comes out negative so that you can send him back to school. So I'm assuming, so he's home. Yeah. So we might have an interruption or two.
Yeah. And if you hear really well, you'll probably hear cartoons in the background and probably Brad banging around here or there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's all part of momming.
I know.
It's all part of momming. Yeah. Speaking of as of last night, my son decided he's dropping out of college. So,
oh, geez, Louise.
Fun times.
Luke.
Yeah. Well, check back. We'll check back in a few hours. It might be different.
Oh, man. So is there an official? Because I know back in my day when I withdrew from college, but I did go back. So that's good. I had to do it before a certain time or else I would get an F. And I did not do it before that certain time. So I got an F.
Ah, okay.
So that's my GPA. So have him check on that.
Yeah. I'm all at this point. I'm like, all right, dude, you're on your own. So have fun with all that. And as of December, you've got nowhere to live. So.
Oh, geez. Wow. Talk about hard conversations.
You better start saving. All right. Oh my gosh. So yeah. So other than that, I'm fabulous.
Oh my
At least we're all healthy, knock on wood.
Well, definitely keep your sanity in my thoughts.
Oh, thank you. I need it. I need it really badly. Seriously. I did have some ice cream last night because I broke down. I was like, I'm not going to have any wine, but I will have ice cream because I cut out dairy. And luckily my stomach didn't give me too much trouble with it. So, and it felt good. It was a Dairy Queen butter finger blizzard. Oh my God.
Nice.
It did make me feel better for about 10 minutes anyway.
Oh, good. Well, that's all that matters.
You're dropping out of college. Damn it. I'm having some ice cream.
Little wins.
That's right. So tough conversations. Mm-hmm. So this is very exciting. You want to get this going, Heather? Because it's
Yeah. So we have a special guest with us today, Jennifer Winegardner, who is a Florida attorney, and she does estate planning. And you may or may not have heard our previous podcast about hard conversations and all having to do with what I went through with my dad and his wife, and how like their wills weren't the same, and it was very her-sided, and my sister and I will see nothing of my dad's because of how the will was laid out and the people that they are. So just having those hard conversations, Vera actually met Jennifer and was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect fit. So we're going to pick her brain today and just talk about how you can set your family up for just having not having to worry about this once you're gone, because we're all going to be gone, right? At some point, like nobody makes it out of life alive. So,
well, and also too, not just for your kids, but even conversations you have, like, that you wish you had with your dad, like, because a lot of us are at that age where our parents are getting older. So you can have the conversation with your parents or start working on a plan for your kids, and your family.
Yeah. So. And a lot of us are in our generation, Vera. I mean, you're significantly older than me. A lot of our families are blended, right? We're all, we come from a very heavily divorced generation, and the generation that we're in, that, we're all, a lot of us have been divorced or, blended families. And so, it makes sense to have these conversations so that the kids and generations in the future are protected.
Yes. And Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Vera. Hi, Heather. How are you?
Great.
Good. So we're going to pick Jennifer's brain today on some things that we can do to from both sides, like I said, with our parents and for our children and with our spouses and step siblings and parents and all that fun stuff. So we'll try not to take up too much of your time, Jennifer, but thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. These are really important conversations, and I applaud your candor and exposing yourself. It's hard. It's hard to talk about when you're on the person who's planning side. It's super hard to talk about when you're the one that was hurt terribly because planning was not maybe as collaborative or as full of education and thought that it could have been. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. It is exactly the kinds of experiences we hear about every day. And when people come into our office and talk to us about these things, I have completely changed my approach to the way I do estate planning because of people like you. And actually, because of some of the personal decisions and the personal experiences I've gone through with my grandparents and dear friends who probably could have had better planning in place. So this is a great opportunity to spread the word and let people know that it doesn't have to be as painful, as frightening, and as confusing as we all think it is until we actually get with the right planner and get things in place.
Yeah. So I think a question that I had, and that from my experience, so my dad and his wife used the same lawyer and to draft up their wills. And so going into that, their wills were not equal, right? So like she left everything to her son, and if her son passed away, then we would see anything. Other way around was my dad split everything between all three of us. So right off the bat, not equitable. And so like how would you handle that if like a blended family came in and you saw that like clearly someone is valuing their children over the other person's children, but the other person isn't is valuing them all the same? Like, how would that look?
Well, obviously it's not my place to judge any family dynamic and impose my own judgments on how people should or should not leave their legacy. But when, it sounds like, and obviously I wasn't there and whatever happened a long time ago. But what I personally experienced with my own grandmother was, when she went in to see a lawyer that was part of her insurance plan. So it's clearly somebody she did not have a long-term relationship with. She just said, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And they just prepared the documents and spit them back to her. And they didn't educate her. They didn't explain to her the consequences of what she was doing. They didn't collaborate with her. They didn't offer her ideas and suggestions as to how things could have been different. And she walked out ignorant of the potential and had a plan that it failed. And so could have been a lot worse than it was, but it was not what I know that she would have wanted. And so that, led me to really do some digging and some research, that and some other experiences. When somebody like your dad and your stepmom come into my office, it is a very educational experience. I mean, we push our sleeves up and we work really, really hard to educate and to collaborate and to design the plan with their wishes and intentions. And, what kind of legacy do they want to leave? We ask those questions up front and collaborate together. Now, if it turns out that husband and wife are not on the same page and they have a very different view of how things should go, they need to split and have different lawyers. I mean, it's the same thing as when one lawyer is handling a divorce. There's a point in time where everybody's not on the same page, and I cannot advocate for one at the expense of the other, or become adverse. And so, we remove ourselves and we counsel them that they need separate counsel. But I tend to think that once a couple comes in and they have the right education and the right tools and the right explanation for how things could go and should go, usually we get to the bottom of what's really at issue. And then when they leave our office at the end of it's a 3-step planning session, they have an opportunity. And I heard one of you saying to explain to their children why they did what they did. We provide that in our process. Explain and let them know why they made the decisions that they made, so that people like you are not left in the dark, because you don't know, did he really mean to do this? Did he not really mean to do this? I can't believe he really wanted the result that actually came about.
Yeah.
We talk them through that and give that the client the opportunity to explain to their kids what's going on. So estate planning is not just about money. It's about, as you guys said, a legacy. And your most important asset is not your checking account. Your most important asset is your kids and your family. And so we really help people approach it holistically, multi-generationally, so that when they leave our office, they have the confidence in knowing that, not only do they know what they have on the financial side, and they have an inventory. So you're not left looking for accounts you didn't know about, but they leave knowing that those hard decisions were actually had, they were committed to paper, and that anybody coming behind them knows exactly what they wanted, what they meant, what they intended, and why they did it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, and that's the thing, my husband and I are probably going to be making an appointment with you, Jennifer, at some point, because we need to update our wills. Because the last time we really did them, was a while ago. My son wasn't 18 yet. And so there were some things that we did. Luckily, we were pretty good about being on the same page and wanting things to work in the same way. But there are a lot of changes that are going to need to be had, but also too, when you're considering doing this for your children, and no matter what age they are, you've got to look at it as your last opportunity to protect them before you're gone, or when you're gone, and you're not just saying, oh, okay, you get this, you get that, and this is how this is going to work. But it's also, I think, because other people, and kind of what happened to Heather, other people in the family, whether they're by marriage or brothers and sisters of the spouse, that might try and grab at stuff if it's not officially accounted for. And that's one of the things that we talked about the last time we did our wills, and making sure that, oh, well, you didn't tag that account. And then, a thirsty member of the family somehow that might think they have rights to whatever that account is or whatever. And again, we're not rich, but even if it's just, a few $1,000s sitting in a checking account, you want it to just cleanly go, okay, well, that's going to go to my son. There you go. It's yours. And that's tagged, instead of somebody coming along saying, well, wait a minute, I should have some of that. Can I have some of that? And then it ends up being this big fat, hairy mess. Right? Am I right? I mean, that's kind of what we kind of went over a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, the goal of estate planning is to keep your family out of court and out of conflict. Yeah. And so, and it's a big myth that you have to have a lot of money to need an estate plan. In fact, the wealthiest people can afford to have a screwed up plan or no plan at all. Their family members are not going to hurt as much as those of us that, of modest means. Your most precious asset is your family and your legacy. Not your checking account. And so why not avail yourself of the kind of documents that you can put in place to really design the legacy that you want to leave? We hear all the time, I don't have enough money. I actually had a conversation with somebody who is in the business of referring people out for estate plans. And I said, well, tell me what does your estate plan look like? Are you guys up to date? And he's like, well, I'm 38 years old. I don't need to do that. I said, well, do you have small children? And he goes, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? You are one of the main, the most important thing you can do for your kids is make sure that if you go to work and don't come home, you know exactly whose care they're going to be in.
Yeah.
Exactly. You may have said, well, yeah, but grandma's going to take care of my little kids, but grandma might be on a cruise. you don't want your kids in CPS custody for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So we have documents where you can leave it on the refrigerator. You can have a wallet card. If anything were to happen to me, if I got into a car accident and I can't be there for my kids, these 10 people are the ones that can take immediate custody of my children until grandma gets back from her cruise.
Yes. That's so true.
Grandma better get a helicopter.
Right? Good, Graham. That was when the first will I ever did was when my husband and I were getting ready to go on a cruise, and we were going to fly. And I have a fear of flying. So I'm already like, we're going to crash and burn. But, I'm going to go anyway. So that was before we left on this big, long European cruise, which was wonderful and years ago. But was what if both of us die in a plane crash? So that can happen. So like you were saying, so what if that happens? Who's going to take care of my son? Who's going to then, if that person's not around, who's going to? So I had a backup person and a little power of attorney, temporary power of attorney thing that I signed off on.
Excellent.
And it totally gave me like absolute peace of mind. Like it just made me feel like I could get on that plane and enjoy myself, even though I was still, taking lorazepam, so I didn't have an anxiety attack on the plane. But all that said, I knew I was like, okay, my son's gonna be okay.
And everybody understands that. I need to appoint a guardian for my minor children. But Vera, when your child turns 18, you know that they're adults. Technically, as you know, your son thinks that he can, figure life out on his own. You really want a safety net, though. If something were to happen to your son, now, most hospitals, emergency rooms will talk to next of kin, but you don't want to leave that to chance. And so your son should probably, every year at graduation, high school graduation time, we post the kids protection plan or the college protection plan. I made my children, when they turned 18, sign a durable power of attorney. I suggested that they hire a lawyer. That wasn't me, to prepare this for them so that they could name whoever they chose to be their attorney, in fact, or the person who would be in charge of their decisions, medical decisions and financial decisions if something were to happen to them. Honestly, my daughter wanted to go on spring break. She wanted to drive to South Florida, and I was trying to find every reason to say no. And I finally threw up a condition that, if you were to get into a car accident, nobody would really know to call me, and I'm not sure they would talk to me. And bingo, my, brain lit up, and I went, every kid needs this, and put her in touch with one of my colleagues, and they prepared a power of attorney. And she named her attorney. In fact, she named her healthcare directive. She did all that. And when my son turned 18, I had him go through the same process. We've all heard about HIPAA lately. Hospitals and doctors can't talk to and divulge your private medical information with just anybody unless you waive the HIPAA rules. Colleges can't talk to you about your 18-year-old's educational information under FERPA laws. So if you're paying the bills, it doesn't matter. So if something were to happen to your child and you desperately needed to get into your adult child, needed to get into their Apple account to find out their last, who were the last people they were texting, what was that about? You're going to need a court order, or unless you have a power of attorney. So these are things that, it might sound scary, but get them in place. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and it's and when we talk about estate planning, it's this kind of comprehensive approach. It's not just a will. There are all different kinds of things you can do at every stage of life, for small children, for young adults, pre-parenthood. As soon as you buy a house, as soon as you have any life-changing event, look at that plan all the way through parenthood and post-parenthood when you're grandparents. And you want to leave that long legacy to your children, or you want to skip your children and make sure your grandchildren have trust in place so that their education is paid for. There are all kinds of things you can do. And I think that's what's missing, or what was missing with my grandparents, was when they were doing their plans, nobody sat down and said, you can be really creative with this stuff. And it's really cool stuff when you start to think of the potentials you can do to protect not only your young children, but through every stage of growth and development.
Well, that's the other thing that you touched on. And I know some of this, I have done some of this. I've had to fill out like a form with every doctor, basically because my son's epileptic. And so, he has a neurologist, and of course he has his primary. And so I have paperwork with each one of those doctors saying that they'll release information to me. But I wanted to see, you touched on the HIPAA stuff and everything like that. Also, like if God forbid something happens to me or to my child or whatever, and there's, that, and I forgot what the term is for it. And I remember talking about it when I was in labor, and here I am in labor, and they're like, sign this. Well, you need to understand. I'm like, why didn't we do this before? Like if you're incapacitated, basically, like who can make
Medical
those
power
decisions?
attorney?
Yeah. Is what's that called, Jennifer? Where, the person can make a decision for you?
Yeah. Those are healthcare directives. So there are a couple different forms for that. You have a healthcare power of attorney, as you said, Heather. You have a living will, which is if the doctor says I am all but dead, don't use life sustaining measures to keep me alive. You have the healthcare directives appoint somebody the ability to make decisions for you if you can't make them. So you're not dead, you're not gonna die, but you just can't decide if that surgery is a good idea because you're in a coma or whatever. But you trust X, Y, and Z person, these three people to make those decisions. And then the HIPAA waiver, we always include that just gives another layer of ability for those people who are making the decisions to know what your medical history is so they can make them informed.
Okay. Well, and then the other question I wanted to ask, because we touched on, it's not super expensive, because I think it's intimidating to a lot of people, especially if luckily you haven't had to hire an attorney in the past, and you're kind of like, oh my God, hiring an attorney, that's got to be thousands upon thousands of dollars to do this. And I'm sure it depends on how complicated everybody's situation is. But if you just wanted at the very least have a really good plan, is it expensive? Like how do you work that out?
Well, everybody, every lawyer is going to do it different. And so, the way that we do it is it's absolutely a flat fee, and you pick your own adventure. That is a plan you design, and as sophisticated as you want it to be, we're there to talk through the ideas and the potentials that, different trusts and different layers of trust that you want. If you don't want that, you don't get that. That's your choice. We would always say what to look for when you're hiring a lawyer is somebody who will do your estate plan for a flat fee. The worst thing that, you want is to be up at night thinking, gosh, if I want to change my mind, or if I want to even just go and talk things out, am I going to get billed at the end of the month for 10 hours that the lawyer took to think? I do hourly work on different kinds of cases, but in estate planning is special. And we never want that hourly bill at the end of the month to prohibit somebody from actually coming in and asking a question. So those are the things that you look for. Don't go with a lawyer that is going to run up an hourly bill that you can't control. Have that conversation up front. How much is this going to cost? And I can't tell you, Vera or Heather, what it would cost you to come into my office, because what I would tell you is come in and sit down and have that conversation with us. We do a very a comprehensive meeting. We often waive the hourly, the rate for that meeting. And you get to choose, what you're going to pay for and what you're not going to pay for. So you don't have to be concerned that you're going to get unexpected bills later on. So those are the things I would say to your, audience. What are you looking for when you're shopping for an attorney? Make sure that they educate you, that there's a collaborative process, that they listen to what you really want, not just, plug and play for documents. Because when you're coming in, you don't have the, you haven't seen a million different plans and know that all the options. And then make sure that they're, that the price is given to you up front and it's a flat fee, so you don't have to be worried about getting unexpected bills.
That's very good to know. And that's, as I mentioned in the, tough conversations with the previous episode, when we went in to do our wills, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, so say you guys both die in plane crash, and then, but then you've got your, at that point, my stepson was in his 20s, I believe. So he was old enough where we could put him on the list of, like guardians, or at least somebody that could help with my son, because my son at the time was little, he was only probably like 4 or 5. So then it was like, okay, well, what if one of you dies, but the other one doesn't? But then if Carson dies, your stepson, or what if, and it was like this weird puzzle of like, okay, who dies in what order? And then where does stuff go and who takes care of who, and depending on the order of when everybody dies. And it was so mind bending, but I was grateful, even though it was exhausting, I was so grateful that they made us kind of start thinking in all those different directions, because you don't really think about all that. And like my mother would say, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, so just because you're young and healthy doesn't mean, so I think, like you said, having someone who's going to talk you through all that stuff and collaborate with you, and not just be like, oh, okay, you each have a kid, you have this. Okay, so let's just do that, bleh.
Well, Vera, I mean, what's the alternative? I mean, I know that's a hard conversation and it's mind bending and it's really exhausting to have to go through alternative A through G. But if you don't do it, the court and a judge is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, let's just say your child has, a special medical condition, and that your sister is the best person to make sure that your child gets the right care or is in alignment with what you would choose. But you don't have that written down anywhere. And your brother petitions the court to be the guardian. That's not maybe a horrible choice. The judge on paper would say this is a great option. Brother has access to, is going to be able to provide the best education and the best this, but maybe you and brother are not in alignment with the healthcare decisions. So it doesn't even have to be ugly. It's just, a judge is going to make a decision for you about healthcare for your child and about financial decisions for your child that may not be in alignment with what you would want. And so, maybe brother comes in, but you'd rather have your best friend make those decisions. So you get to do that in your documents without hurting anybody's feelings. And then you can explain that, maybe in a letter to your brother. This is really what I really wanted. I wanted my best friend to do this because she has a child in a similar situation. And we've been through this experience for years. And I know that she knows what I want for the healthcare decisions for my child. So the the alternative to not having these conversations is that you put them in the hands of somebody who doesn't know you and who is only making decisions to the best of their ability based on what's in front of them. And it may not be what you want. And it may not be the best for your child. So we always say, when people come in and say, I don't have an estate plan, we say, yes, you do. You don't have one. The state has one for you.
Yeah.
So it's not that the state's going to take all your money, but they are going to decide where your money goes and who takes care of your kids.
Yeah. And that's the scary part.
Brad and I, we don't have any other kids, or we just have the one Baker. And so we did do that plug and play through the military, because, it's whatever we can get for less expensive. That's the route we're going. And it seems pretty simple, right? So we we named, his brother and sister-in-law, and that we've already had the conversation with them. Like, if something happens, will you take him? And they're like, yes. And so we've had those conversations with those people, and we have the plug and play paperwork, what you're saying. But like, is there anything else that we should be thinking about? Because I don't know the difference between like a trust and a, literally everything will go to them to pass on to Baker. And we have full confidence that they aren't going to take anything, because they're not those kind of people at all.
Yeah. And it, look, any plan is better than no plan. Okay. So if you have stuff in place, that is great. That is just wonderful. But there are a lot of cool things you can do when you're ready for it and when you feel like it's a good time. So for example, Baker is what, 5 years old? 4 years old. If your guardians were going to inherit money outright from you, maybe through life insurance or through, money that, selling your house or whatever, you may trust them intimately with that money to do what's best for Baker. But you can put a trust in place and they would actually be the trustees of Baker's money until he turns 18. But you can put a trust in place specifying exactly how you want that money spent. And then, when Baker turns 18, he would get it outright. So you can put provisions in a trust and Vera, you may, fall off a curb tomorrow and do you really want your 18-year-old to get everything? Well, I guess you guys would split it between the two children, but I know a lot of 18-year-olds who just cannot handle even $50, let alone 50,000.
Yeah,
so trust planning is really cool because I had one client who said, I want my children to get money from me, but I don't want it all at once. So this person said, every 5 years, they're going to get a percentage of whatever their trust is so that, for the next 20 years, they're going to get a little gift from me if I'm gone and they can use that for a new car or maybe a wedding coming up and they know that money's coming. And then, in that case, we gave the trustee a little bit of leeway to say, in an emergency or in a certain circumstance that the trustee can make some decisions and distribute the money. But the cool thing with trust work is that it's a contract and you get to design it yourself. You get to put in place, there's no hard and fast rule on how to do the trusts. So you can be as creative as you want. And there are some really cool things you can do to protect assets, depending on the level of control you put in the hands of the beneficiary and the trustee.
I love
so
that.
Fascinating.
I know. There's so many ins and outs.
I know. Like, it's just like I read it. Can I write on a Post-it note? Like just leave. Do what's best for him.
Yeah, just do what's best. Ding, all done, easy peasy.
Yeah, not outside the state.
So
well,
what? Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, God. The thing about it is that it sounds overwhelming, and I can get on a soapbox and I can talk about this stuff all day long because of the experiences I've had. And when I hear your story, it's like everybody's had these painful experiences, or maybe not everybody, but a lot of people. And it sounds overwhelming. And it sounds like a lot, but when you get into an office with the right attorney and the right planning team, it can be fun and it can be creative, and with the right process, you will have more confidence than you've ever had, and you will feel more empowered than you've ever had, and control of those assets. You work so hard to get a house. You work so hard for those accounts that you've put money into, and you want to leave all this stuff to your kids. But I mean, I did the same thing. I knew that we had some accounts out there, and I never sat down until I actually kind of took my own advice and made an inventory. And I only did that because my grandmother didn't. And I only did that because when she died, I had to go and get her mail. My mother was getting her mail out of her mailbox all month, and we were opening up bank statements, and we saw that she had a stock account, and she had the will in place, and we opened it up. We realized there was no beneficiary on it, and so I was like, "Oh, this has to go through probate." There was $1,200 in that stock account, and I had to hire a probate attorney, and the cost of a probate was $4,500.
Oh my gosh.
So we were probating an estate because my grandmother didn't have the proper guidance to name beneficiaries on all her accounts, because she didn't have an inventory. She didn't know really what she had. And it really wasn't even valued at the cost of the probate.
Wow.
So I know she didn't want that. I know she didn't intend that, but nobody sat with her and said, listen, Stella, you've got to have an inventory of all this stuff. So when you go, your family knows what you have. And then, do you have beneficiaries on all your accounts? Do you know where they're going to go when you die? And so, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, can you explain what a probate is exactly? Because I kind of know what you're talking about. I know because my husband had to deal with it when his mother passed away. But I always, you hear that word thrown around and it's kind of like, what is that exactly?
Right. Right. Well, probate is a lawsuit. And so what happens when someone dies is, depending on the size of their probate assets, there's all kinds of estates. So you've got, that word is pretty vague, and it is situationally specific. But in the context of a probate estate, there are only certain assets that have to go through probate. So if you don't, for example, your home would not be a probate estate, at least not in Florida. But if you have rental property or you have investment property, that may have to go through a probate process unless you title it in the name of a trust, or you have somebody who is, in a survivorship deed situation. So you want to talk with your attorney about how those assets are titled and make sure, that it's going to pass outside of a probate estate if that's what you choose. So what happens when you die, if you have probate assets, depending on if it's more than $75,000, less than $75,000 worth of assets, they go through a judicial process. So there's an inventory taken, and a judge makes sure that everything is accounted for that's probatable, and that all of the estate's debts are paid. And the legal debts. I mean, there's, that's a little sophisticated, and then settles the estate and closes it out once everything has been inventoried and everything that has to get paid gets paid. And that can take and so it sounds to me like, a lot like what happens in bankruptcy. When you look at everything you have, you look at everything you owe, you balance the account, you reconcile the account, and away you go, and it's closed. So that's kind of what is happening in probate. However, if there are people, if the will says that, Susie gets all of my assets, and Sister Patty says, you know what, that's not what Dad wanted. It's rife for litigation, and it's rife for people, challenging the will and challenging the disbursements and challenging, whether Dad was in his right mind when he signed that will. So probate litigation is a real thing. It's expensive. It's time consuming. And even if there is no litigation, by the way, it's expensive and time consuming. If you have to probate an estate, your kids are not going to get their share until the judge closes the estate out. And, that could take 6 months, a year. And so, we talk about that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And if that's okay, and the, client says, yeah, that's fine. They're not going to need the money. That's fine. Then it's fine. But if the client says, I really want my kids to get money from their estate, or I really want that trust to be in place right away, we do trust planning. And instead of going through probate, there's a meeting in the office, and an hour later, everything is distributed and it's over. I mean, I don't mean literally. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah.
It doesn't take more. It doesn't take an hour, but I mean, you get the idea.
Yeah. So the trust. So then that's the benefit of having a trust.
That is one of the benefits of having a trust. And there are all kinds of trusts. There are all kinds of trusts. They do all kinds of things. So you have to have a conversation with your attorney about what your goals are and your objectives are, and then design together what your trust needs to say in order to achieve those objectives.
Cool. See, we're learning so much, Heather.
I know. I'm just like,
I know it's a lot.
I know. That's why there are special people like Jennifer that do these things.
It really came about because I was doing all this, the old fashioned way. I was just responsive, responding to people and reactive, come in, get a will, get it, get the advanced healthcare directives, get all that lined up and handed them and sent them on their way. And I had to personally go, I had two grandmothers die within 3 months of each other. And I had done one grandmother's estate and plan, and the other one was in Ohio, and I didn't have anything to do with that. And so at the same time, I was a client in both situations, and I saw what everybody else goes through. We're so used to pushing out documents, but until we're actually the client, we don't know what that experience is like, is like for our clients. And so I have had to go through that. And I saw where my Ohio grandma's plan failed. And I just knew I had to do it better. I knew there was a better way, and I knew I had to do it better. And I think the primary goal is to empower people, to give them confidence that they have a handle on they work so hard for their assets and their retirement. And they work so hard to make sure their kids go to the right preschool and have the right lunch, and but they forget that there's more to do. And it doesn't have to be complicated. I know I've given you a lot of information, but believe me that when you start the process, it is slower, it is more specific to your circumstance, and which case it is a lot easier to swallow in small bites, and the clients do embrace it and are empowered to know that their stuff is taken care of if anything were to happen. And it's not just death, it's incapacity too.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to ask the thing about the healthcare, the health. Again, I forgot the word or the term already, and you just told me the health thingy. I'm
healthcare
terrible
directives,
on technical terms. Thank you. Healthcare directives.
So don't wait until you're sick to get this done.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
now's the time.
Well, like I said, they had me signing off on stuff when I'm in labor, and I'm like, like what? Like, sign right here. Wait, what is this exactly? Luckily, one of my good friends who's an attorney was in the room with me. So she's like, okay, this is what this is. All right. Yeah, no, just sign here. You're good. You're good. So, but yes, you don't want to be in that kind of a situation. I do not recommend. But if somebody wanted to find you, Jennifer, can they maybe send you an email with a question or?
Yes. You can find me on Facebook at Winegardner Law. You can find me on the internet, obviously, at winegardnerlaw.com. It's WINEGARD as in dog, NER. I know it's a mouthful. I inherited that, or I accepted that name from my husband. So
I think it's cool, actually. I think it's kind of a cool name.
it's a lot of typing. So yeah, winegardnerlaw.com. And I do want to say, if you navigate through my website, for those of you who have minor children, there is an opportunity for you to create for free your a kids protection plan. So you would be able to go in and name emergency guardians for your children, temporary guardians for your children, so that you can leave this on your refrigerator. You can leave instructions for your babysitter. If anything were to happen, if you were to, if you guys are out to lunch today and don't make it home, the people who are staying with your kids would know what to do. And that is a platform that I've embraced and is, navigate through the website and you can have it too.
Cool. I love that. That's, again, any bit of peace of mind when you have children is certainly valuable. So thanks again, Jennifer, so much for being on with us. And
thank you.
We may very well reach out to you again if some other stuff comes up, like, okay, wait, we got to call Jennifer, got to get her on here because
absolutely. There is so much more to talk about. We could talk about the 5 documents you must have. I could go on and on for hours, but I know that our time today is limited. So definitely reach back out as questions pop up. And I would love to participate and answer them and help your audience any way that I can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you want to contact us, of course, ican'tmomtodaypodcast@gmail.com. And we're on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, it's private. I Can't Mom Today. So we all get on there every so often and do our venting.
Or asking questions.
That too. So yes. And then don't forget to rate the podcast, please.
Yep.
5 stars or 4. We'll take 4. 5 would be better. But until next time, I guess.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.